Hello, and welcome to the Shifting Culture podcast, in which we have conversations about the culture we create and the impact we can make. I'm your host, Joshua Johnson. Go to shiftingculturepodcast.com to interact or donate. If you're enjoying this podcast, it would be great if you could go to Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leave a star rating or review. It will help us get to more listeners. Thank you very much. Today we have a conversation with Emma Cotterill. Emma is Swedish and has worked in the NGO community against human trafficking for 12 years in the UK and Sweden. She and her husband, Mark, have planted missional communities and founded a network for pioneer leaders called Venture 12. We have a fantastic conversation that covers anti-trafficking models and work, empowering others into kingdom work, collaboration, APEST thinking, and more. It's a really good one, so I hope you enjoy it. Here's Emma. Emma, thank you so much. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to this.
Thanks so much for inviting me. I look forward to having a chat with you today.
Yeah, we'll have a nice little chat. I'd love to start with your story. So if you just walk us through where you've been, where you've come from, and what you've been doing.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Swedish and I've been in ministry for many years. I've been working for about 8 years in the UK. My husband's British, so we've been planting a missional community there. And we're currently planting a missional community in Helsingborg, Sweden. So we've come back to Sweden.
Yeah.
But my professional work has primarily been in the anti-trafficking world. So yeah, we're kind of keen on the multicultural, the diverse, the social justice, the kind of incarnational expression of church and serving the poor as part of the work that we do, but also, heavily sort of focused on anti-trafficking. I have been for the last 12, almost 13 years now.
Oh, wow. So what brought you into that? Why did God move you into that place of working in anti-trafficking?
Well, it was kind of a journey, really. I studied at a Bible college in the UK when I was 18 for a year. And I think I went there not really understanding my own faith, but wanting to explore God more and just understanding my calling and that kind of thing. And I was thrown into situations where I was serving the poor in different ways, people with mental health problems, people who were homeless. And I really found myself through that work and understanding, I guess, the Bible and understanding the story that comes through the Bible and the life of Jesus in a completely different way. So that was kind of the first step, I guess. And then I'm one of those people that had a very clear calling moment in terms of the anti-trafficking work at a conference where somebody, I think it was from India or Nepal or something like that, was speaking about their work in anti-trafficking. And I really experienced God sort of move in my life and telling me that that's what I was going to be doing.
Wow.
It took a few years before that actually started to sort of happen after that. But yes, I've been involved in that in different ways ever since, and law was like the vehicle, I guess, that I took initially. But increasingly, it's become part of the sort of missional journey and missional story of understanding church. So I think I've had different perspectives on that and lots of different roles.
So as you've been walking with your, in your journey in anti-trafficking, especially in the law space, how is your faith integrated into both of those worlds, that there's not really the sacred and the secular, that it's all integrated? How has that worked for you, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's sort of growing and developing all the time. I guess my APEST is PA, so prophetic apostolic would be my strengths. And I often struggled in church as a young person and started to understand my faith and my relationship with God and where God wanted me to be through engaging in in justice issues. And that led me to actually not enjoy organized church so much, but it led me to the parachurch communities more. I found, that I was hanging out with like-minded people more in NGOs and that kind of community.
Right.
So I sort of explored ministry, I guess, through that vehicle, through that sort of perspective initially. And then I guess my husband's in ministry as a Salvation Army officer. It's been sort of the journey that we've made together in, what does it mean to plant a church, and how does that relate to my calling and how I see the world, and is there a way of these things coming together and being one, or are they already one?
Yeah.
And I guess my understanding these days, which has been a wrestle through different contexts and communities, and understanding myself and the church, that it's all part of mission. It's all just different aspects of mission. And it's become much more clearer in the role that I'm in now since 2015, where God really clearly, started talking to me about developing a local anti-trafficking model here that is now being replicated to other parts of the country, that I could see suddenly how the anti-trafficking work ought to be linked to the local church work, and why they are part of the same thing but different expressions of the ministry of Jesus, really. And I guess APEST has been a big part of that as well, and growing in understanding of the fivefold ministry and the different leadership gifts that expresses. But continuing to journey with that.
Well, I think as you enter into that anti-trafficking space with your eyes, especially as you are prophetic apostolic, that you're looking at bringing those on the margins back into community. You're going after trafficked people who are lost and in situations which they find themselves in that are pretty harrowing and hard and difficult, that you want to bring them back out into community. What does it look like to get people on the margins, people that have really maybe been traumatized and it's been a difficult time, to bring them back in and integrate back into life and community?
It's a long haul. It's a very long-term journey, and I think I've grown in my own understanding of what that means over the years, and I think the anti-trafficking community in some ways is recovering in some parts, and some parts probably still needs that kind of metanoia moment of understanding that we don't rescue anybody, we can't rescue anybody, that it's not an event to rescue somebody, and it's definitely got to be on their terms. Individuals who've been victims of this horrendous crime have got to make a lot of choices when they are sort of offered the opportunity to be free, in a sense, or they are presented with an open door or even an open window, slightly ajar window, which is sometimes the case. I can't give them everything that they need to resolve their situation. I can't, for example, I met a couple of ladies from Colombia during the pandemic in a hotel room in our city, just a stone's throw away from where I'm sat now in our church building. And, the reason that they'd ended up in this country was because all of the work in hospitality had disappeared. They'd been promised a job that didn't exist in this country, and they were basically lured into prostitution. And they were just crying, their families just relying on their income to survive back home in their home country. And in that position, I could fool myself into thinking, I'm going to rescue you. I'm going to be the hero in this situation. I'm going to bring you out, and there's going to be a quick fix. I'll just bring you to a safe house and all will be well. But at the end of the day, their situation has got so many root causes to do with poverty, to do with organized crime, and to do with the fact that they are the sole breadwinner of their family. far away from here. So you've got to have a very sobering look at these kind of problems, and a very humble view. I take a very humble view as to the role that I can play in somebody's life. But in that situation, you know, I can do a number of things to help improve their possibility to actually make a choice for themselves. And I can pray with them, because these were Christian women. And I can speak truth into their life. You know, you're worth more than this. So every individual case, you know, I've dealt with hundreds of cases of human trafficking over the last few years, and I don't consider myself an expert on human trafficking, because every case is so unique and throws up so many challenges for us that you've got to do the journey with each individual person. We had a lady that we worked with for, I think it was 3 years. We engaged with her. And it took us nearly 2 years to get her out of the situation that she was in. She was being exploited by a partner in prostitution. And we managed eventually, after 2 years, to remove her from the situation, place her in a safe house. And she was doing really well. But then we lost touch with her. So we weren't sure, how is she doing? You know, is she really poorly now? What's happened? Has she gone back to the perpetrator, whatever? And only just a couple of weeks ago, she messaged and she wanted to come for a coffee. And we got to see her years after all of this took place. And she was like, I just wanted to come and say thank you.
Wow.
Because I'm in a good place right now. And so you've got to treasure those moments. You know, it doesn't happen that often. But it's the long haul. You've got to do the long journey with people. And some of them, you know, will join our community, or they will be on the outskirts of our community eventually. Right. But it takes a lot of time.
Yeah. And I think that's good for anybody, as if you're going on mission, you're doing something where you're interacting with other people, that it is a long-term perspective, that it's not a short-term fix, that we want to journey with people, walk with people. You know, Jesus was somebody who walked with people for a long time, that he didn't just have short-term fixes all the time. Sometimes it was a miracle, you know, that they brought it in, but with the people that he engaged with, his followers, it was long-term, walking with them, speaking with them every day. And, you know, as you're going into these things, and, you know, what are some of these things that can correlate into our conversations with non-believers in our everyday lives, where we're helping them get to a place of change, or helping them make decisions on their own. We're helping them discover truth for themselves. Have you discovered any principles that we could take as we're interacting with just non-believers around us?
I mean, I almost only interact with non-believers in my work. And, you know, I find that God calls me to those places, and I'm in one of the most secularized parts of the world, and one of the most secularized parts of this country. And, you know, one of the things that I find is that people are tired of religion. Yep. But they're quite interested in the kingdom, you know, when it's expressed. And so, you know, the kind of conversations that I'm having with police officers, with social workers, with the head of the council here, I think the conversations that I have today are down to the long-term work of building bridges and building the foundations of the work that is having a clear impact on this city, not just for individuals, but actually strategically now. And it's that credibility. Like, what are you here for? Are you here to manipulate me? Are you here to convert me? Are you here to tell me I'm a sinner? You know, why are you here? The Salvation Army, which is the organization I work for, didn't have any credibility in this region. In fact, we've been very, very, very small in this region, and so have most other denominations, because it's never had a major revival. So there's no sort of there's not that heritage of understanding the Christian story in a sense.
Yeah.
So I think people want to believe what you can show them through. They don't want to be preached at. They want to see.
Yeah.
They want to see the kingdom. And actually, when they see the kingdom, and they might, they wouldn't term it that way, and I wouldn't express it that way to them, but they want to actually get involved. People that
right.
the most of the people that I send out into kingdom work, in a sense, are non-believers.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't tell them that I'm apprenticing them necessarily. I wouldn't tell them that I'm sending them in to do a job for the kingdom. But God will point people out to me and say, invest in that person now. This person is going to take you to the next level. And, that most of them are not Christian.
Right.
And so I think there's a case of, we need to see people as God sees them. I think we put barriers in place for ourselves of how we understand people, how we categorize people in ways that God would never do. We've no idea what this person's journey is going to be, or the kind of impact that this person's work is going to have. So it's being humble enough, I think, to see actually I can have a certain amount of impact on this city on the basis of my skills, my gifts, and what God's calling me to. But actually, if I lead through these people that God's now revealing to me, the impact is not only going to be sustained from what I've done, but it's going to grow, and it's going to be taken to the next city and the next level. And it's taking that journey with God, which is, it's a humbling journey, but it's a hero-making journey, and it's being open to the fact that God wants to use whosoever.
Right.
And he'll do it before they say yes to Jesus a lot of the time as well.
Yeah, of course. But what does it look like for you as he reveals it to yourself and you see something in other people? What does it look like as you're equipping others to go out and do the work? And what does it look like for you to get that revealing from God, like to know that this is him speaking?
Well, I've gone through lots of different phases in the work in Helsingborg, really. Initially, God spoke to me a lot just about the city. It was very much just understanding the soil, the land that I'm in, the heritage that God's already kind of rooted in this city, the problems that are there, seeing the God stuff and seeing the bad stuff as well for what it is, and just taking time for that. And then only after that, I think God started to speak to me in prayer and through just meeting people and just being in places, immersing yourself in the community, going to meetings. I went to a lot of meetings that I was never invited to because I needed to be in places.
Yeah.
And people would ask, why are you here? Who invited you? But I just need to, I'm just doing this. I'm just here to listen. I did a lot of that kind of thing in the beginning, and that can be tough, but also quite fun if you start just getting the hang of that. And then I think God is just, once I started to understand what God wanted me to do, I suppose you'd call it a vision, but it wasn't just like given to me in one go or anything. It was kind of revealed over time as I was immersing myself with people and in the community. Then I'd understood that, okay, he wants me to build a local anti-trafficking model to be rolled out in other places. It was like, okay, one step at a time. And God's been really persistent with me of like, you only need to know this much right now. And recently it's been a lot about people and about how to sustain the work that has been planted and started, the foundations that I've been able to lay down, and me seeing that, okay, I'm coming to the end quite soon of the job that God actually gave me to do for this season with this work. Who does he want to build on now? And I can just give you one example of a police officer that I met. He's been around. He's been, I collaborate with lots of agencies and businesses and other NGOs. And this guy has been around for a long time. He's never really attended my meetings that I hold for the collaborative work that we do together. But suddenly I just felt I need to contact him. I didn't know why, but I invited him to a meeting, and I felt I need to put some demands down. I was like, are you sure about this, God? Like, yeah, he can take it, kind of thing. So I'm having this, prayer / activating thing going on where I'm sending emails just to see if he'll respond. And he came, and he took all of my demands. There were quite many. And I just felt in that meeting as we were going through them, and you've got to be careful coming with demands to authorities. It's not always appropriate, and a lot of the time it's actually not appropriate. So I had to be quite convinced that, okay, this is it's the time to do this now. So I just said to him, look, the work that we've done has come to a plateau phase. We can either decide that this is it, this is the end of the road in terms of the work, because actually we've either got to go forward now and push through into a new phase of growth, or it's going to go downhill. And funnily enough, it appeared that he was very strategically minded. So this is the first police officer, because I work with a lot of operatives. He understood this language, and I even started talking to him about multiplication, movement and all of that kind of thing. And he completely got it and went into, thinking about action points that he could bring with him. So actually made my list of demands longer in that meeting. And not only that, I met him, I think it was I ran into him because I'd gone to the police station to renew my son's passport. So not to see him, but I bumped into him in the corridor. And he was like, oh, Emma, by the way, I've spoken to these other police regions, and 3 of them are interested in your new project. And we want to scale it out to all of these regions now. So I'm having meetings next week. And I was like, right. So that's why you needed to be involved.
Yeah.
So he's
amazing.
Like building on my work, and I've got no idea what he's doing really.
Yeah.
But, apparently I've got to work with some other areas now. So that will be interesting in the new year.
Yeah. That's really fascinating. I want to just move a little bit into movement thinking as we're looking at APEST and entire systems, because you're looking at collaborative work. You've mentioned APEST. You've mentioned, if anybody knows APEST language, you've actually been hitting on different prophetic language, apostolic language, shepherding language in what you've been talking about. And knowing that all of these facets need to work together to actually see some change happen, that we can't just have one, precocious little, evangelistic output over there, but we need the whole system to take place. What does it look like for you to see a system and know that, if we plateau and we have a shepherding and we have a teaching moment and we just stay a little bit insular and we don't push through in the apostolic again, what does it look like for you to collaborate in this systems thinking and this holistic thinking as it pertains to your city and the model that you want to create?
Well, first of all, we work on the basis of APEST in our team here in the church. So we went through the journey of just discovering APEST as a team, and there's 5 of us. Funnily enough, we're all strong. Our strongest is in different APEST. So we've actually got a complete APEST in one sense,
cool.
Almost like Jesus, one might say. No, honestly, but we've really enjoyed taking that journey, and I, for one, I think have enjoyed it the most, because I suddenly realized that I could be free to do some of the things that I felt compelled to do, but I always struggled with these expectations on me, both as a woman and around the shepherding teacher sort of mode of church that we've got used to. So as a church, we have that as part of our sort of platform that we work from. That's how we make decisions, that kind of thing. When it comes to the anti-trafficking work, I'm fortunate enough to have on team with me a lady who is an evangelist shepherd as her main. So she's like my second in command. So I
Yeah.
pass all the clients on to her so that I don't need to do the one-to-one stuff, which,
Yep.
my lowest is the shepherding side. So I really struggle with that. And actually it becomes quite heavy for me, all the trauma that you discover when you meet individuals. But somehow she has got the arms and the ability to embrace lots and lots of people. So we try to play from our strengths when we can, and obviously grow in our weaknesses as much as we can as well. But the starting point for all of us on team here in Helsingborg as part of the church is definitely that we should be spending most of our time, as far as we're able, in our strengths, because that's what makes us happy.
Right.
And that's what makes things happen and grow and flourish. In terms of the sort of collaboration with agencies and other organizations, it's a lot harder, but you can see the tendency to lean towards the shepherding teacher as well.
Yeah.
And you'll get the same thing with institutions. Local authorities are organized very much in a similar way to the church, with a shepherding teacher, with all the in our country at least, with all the bureaucracy and processes and procedures. They squeeze out the entrepreneurs and the innovation. If you speak up against the system, you're not necessarily going to stay for a long time. So there's a great need in the authority world, the governmental agency world, for innovators and entrepreneurs as well. And I guess that's why they like me here, because I'm able to bring that edge in some places.
Yep.
Well, that's been the benefit, I think, for all of us as we've started this journey together. And I think now we've ended up in a place where other people can perhaps steward some of that in different ways. So similar journeys, I think, you can take even with people who are not believers, but using that lens to understand what's going on.
Yeah. It gives you, I think it gives you a perspective of Jesus that's at work around the city and already at work in people. There are so many unredeemed gifts. I mean, just knowing, as I've engaged in the Middle East, especially among Syrian refugees, we noticed a lot of things where a woman at the end of a visit would, take the Arab coffee that we have drunk, and you have coffee grounds at the bottom. So at the end of your Arab coffee, you're just chewing coffee. So you don't want to take all of it. All right. So she takes the cup and she turns it over and she reads coffee grounds. Right. And so she's trying to tell us her future. So she's looking for some sort of an answer for the future. She has an unredeemed prophetic gift. And so we know that she, inside of her, there's something prophetic that God wants to redeem and use for his kingdom. And so with that woman, she ended up coming to Jesus, and she has used that gift in incredible ways. And she's really spoken out prophetically with other people and other women. And it's really been amazing to watch her journey, to see an unredeemed gifting that God places within us become redeemed and used for his kingdom. And we can see that all over the world and all over in different people, that they have these gifts already inherent within them. And that we just have to start to pull those threads and then pull those out of them, and then let God do that redeeming work so that it could actually be used for his kingdom. So what does that look like as you're looking and you're seeing these different gifts in people? How do you do some of that pulling out?
I think I try to get alongside people. I think initially it's because of this suspicion, I think, against religion that we generally have in my country. Building relationships and being yourself with people is really key to begin with. And with some of the people that I've journeyed for the last few years now who don't believe in Jesus, but who are very much part of the kingdom work that we do here now. Well, I find myself apprenticing them in some way, even though we haven't spoken about our relationship in that way. But teaching them in some ways, both about anti-trafficking is a specialized area of work, so there's reason for them to sort of ask my advice or whatever, but just generally like walking alongside them on cases. So I'll be going into brothels with some social workers, for example, and just one story of somebody's mind being completely blown by the fact that I brought tea with me. For me it's just normal,
right?
I'm going to have a conversation with a person who's in a dire place. Let's have a cup of tea, the British way. And for her, she was just like coming out of the place. She was like, what did you do there? How did you think of that? I'm just like, it's just tea. I brought a flask. This is, she's like, it's unbelievable. It's revolutionary. I don't know how many times she's mentioned that to me. Wow. I'm just like, I've done a few other things in life that were reasonably good as well. But, let's mention the tea again for the 10th time. So I think, working with people, inviting people in, we do a lot of work with people. And I think, in my country where we don't have a lot of money for mission, and there'll be other places like that in the world, I'll never be able to grow my team to be as many as we would need to be. There's no way. Like the money is just not there. I have to work really hard to fundraise for the people that we do have. So it's just realizing, okay, if I'm going to make an impact, I've got to work with and through other people's leadership. And what does that mean? It means me inviting them into my space and letting them into my secrets. I don't need to be this expert on a pedestal somewhere. Some people play that game. For me, that's not going to help anybody. So it's inviting people in to see, this is how I do it. This is not perfect, but this is what I've learned over the last 12 years. And, this could work. What do we do in this situation? So in different parts of my work, I'll invite people in, and we do immersion, we do apprenticing, we do reflection together. And we have, increasingly people. In the beginning, I was asking people to come alongside. Now I have to say no to people who want to come alongside and do things. We can't take on every project that people want to do, but we in every part of the work that I'm responsible for in anti-trafficking, we're always working with other people on the inside, not just pretend that we're collaborating, but we're actually working alongside and together with. And I think that's why we're still here with this work, to be honest. And it's the only way that we can affect the kind of things that we're trying to affect in this society.
That's really important to think about, is that you have an open hand, that you're humble, that you're willing to collaborate, that you're willing to say, hey, we need other people to be able to be fruitful and successful. And if we don't have others, it's not going to work. And you're willing to work with all sorts of different agencies and different people. And so that's important, as we know a lot of people. I mean, I live in the missions world, and, I lead a missions agency. I interact with other mission agencies, and a lot of people talk about collaboration, and on the ground, it works better. On the upper echelon of decision makers, it usually doesn't work very well. Sometimes it does. But what is it like? How do we truly collaborate one to another in a way that honors God, and that doesn't just say, I'm doing my thing, you're doing your thing, and hopefully something meets in the middle? What does true collaboration look like?
I guess it's allowing other people to shape things together with you. Being prepared for the messiness. And if I bake with my kids, which I've been doing for Christmas.
Yeah.
I could go into that thinking we're going to make some perfect Christmas cakes, and I will be disappointed.
Yes.
Because they're not going to do things the way that I wanted them to do.
Yep.
So it's a case of like, okay, I could either make perfect cakes the way I want them to be, and then I have to do it at night when they're asleep, or we'll do them together and they will be neatly original in every shape of the word, you know. So I just think high invitation is really key to collaboration, and allowing people to have a say, allowing people to feel and experience that they have ownership. Otherwise, I'm just manipulating people into my vision.
Yeah.
But I think God's vision is always going to be bigger than my vision. So I might come in with a vision or God might give me part of the vision of what he wants to do. Somebody else in the room might actually have a dream or a vision that they may not know is from God, but that's the other part of the puzzle. And I don't know that. And so I've got to be careful that I'm not overstretching my influence. And there's a lot of things that you can say about influence. And it's being attentive to other people and having that, I guess, for me, it's a lot about having the prophetic wisdom of who do I collaborate with?
Yeah.
That's the more important question than how do we collaborate? Because we've got to find each other and everybody's got to contribute to what that collaboration looks like. But the question that I've got to really invest in prayer and in, you know, immersing myself in spaces, because that's how I listen, is who do I collaborate with? And that's, I think, the hard lesson that I've had to learn over the years with collaboration, is that you can really go quite wrong if you choose the wrong people to collaborate with.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. As you're a prophetic apostolic person, what does it look like for you to be using your apostolic voice and your apostolic voice within the church and then in community? What does that look like for you in your world?
I've started lots of new things over the years. It's only the last few years that I've understood myself as having an apostolic gifting. I wasn't really into the fivefold before I started reading Alan Hirsch and doing all of these different courses and what have you. And that's the last 4 or 5 years or something like that. But I think the way things work for me, because I'm a PA in my gifting, is that I'll spot something that I feel God has a strong, it's got heart for. There's something wrong here. I can feel God nudging me, and I'll get a strong desire to change something or to do something about something. And my response to that feeling is to create something new, to start a new program, to set up a new project, to create a new initiative. So I think my apostolic is responding to my prophetic. So in a way, that becomes the answer to the question that God put in my heart in one sense. More recently, in terms of my exploration of the female apostolic, which is something that's much, much more recent, I have come at it from a different perspective, but that's quite new. So I don't know if I'm sort of ready to reflect on that yet. But yeah, perhaps there's a new season or new way that God wants to teach me about. But primarily it's been coming from a prophetic urge. So almost like a prophetic act of standing up against something or standing with someone. And we do that through this initiative. And this is how, I'm contributing in some way to kingdom work.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think for a lot of women, it's important to know that, their apostolic voice is necessary and needs to be heard. And then there's also a different perspective that needs to be engaged in the female apostolic. I mean, I am immersed in a place where there's a lot of female apostolic leaders around me, my wife being one, and then, our international leader at my mission agency is a female. But we have a lot of that there. So when when people don't have that around, I think it's strange and it's weird. Um, I think that it's really necessary that we let people know that they do have a voice, but everybody actually has a voice and has a sphere of influence that they can use. That a lot of times our voices have been squashed, and they are not being listened to. They're not being heard. But there is a voice in there that God has given for you to use, and a gifting that He's given you, and it's for everybody. It's not just for the select few. And so, what is it for you as you've been walking with people that may have their voices crushed? How do we give people the permission to use their voice?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the sort of the inner healing journey. What I've kind of discovered since, I guess, God started to nudge me in that area, and I was avoiding it beforehand because I was like, I don't actually want to read those difficult Bible passages that everybody's talking about in terms of female leadership. So I'm just going to avoid them and do my own thing and do what I know that God wants me to do. But since starting to look at it more seriously and studying more and exploring more, I think there's a structural piece that we need to grapple with as church, which is to do with the history of the church, which is to do with female apostles in the Bible and the early church, which is about telling a different story of our church and of our, the experience of movement within the church. So yeah. I can really see that for me, the issue of the lack sometimes in a lot of places, fortunately not in yours, of female apostolic leaders is potentially unhelpful to frame it in that way. We've got to frame it as a movement issue because there are so many other factors at play when we're talking about that. And coming back to people who don't experience that they've got a voice, I think there are so many things that would be released if there was a new story told over the church, if more women were aware of actually the heritage of female apostles, and movers and shakers in the early church in particular. And I find, as I'm exploring together with some women currently in a seniors band, as it's known within the Movement Leaders Collective, a group of women coming together to explore female apostolic leadership. Even looking at early art has been really impacting for them, as it reveals a lot about the history that we're actually a part of, the witnesses on whose shoulders we're standing, but we weren't aware. So I think a lot of the kind of inner healing that needs to happen within individuals potentially will come quite organically if we deal with some of the notions and the tradition and the theology that we have been brought up with. So it's unraveling all of that and telling a new story. And it's connected to APEST because it's so interconnected with, the clergy, as opposed to the priesthood of all believers, and the charismatic gifts being given to anybody with the Holy Spirit, and all of those kind of things. So it's connected with big issues, even the Trinity I'm looking at now. I'm reading on all of these massive topics. But I think, we could deal with it on an individual level, but I think for more movemental purposes for the church, we could get there much quicker if we dealt with our past a bit more and reframed the story.
I love that. Deal with our past, reframe the story. I think that's, what a great gift to the church if we could be able to do that. And what a great gift for every individual if we can reframe the past, right? That we can tell a different story. Like that's fantastic. This is some of that inner healing work that, bringing Jesus into memories and of trauma for me that I've gone through has really redefined what my story has been. That knowing that Jesus was there and that he could heal that aspect, I get to actually tell a new story moving forward. So I think that's really important for the church and really important for individuals. I love that. So thank you for that. I have two questions at the end here. One is, if you go back to your 21-year-old self, what advice would you give?
Don't run so fast. There's no need to run at that speed. Yeah. So slow down.
And that's interesting. I think so many people that I talk to for this podcast, that's their answer, is to slow down.
Really? Yeah.
And I think it's something really worth considering in our lives. Is we need to learn how to slow down, and that God is actually doing a lot of the work, and we're not the savior, right?
Exactly.
And anything you've been reading or watching lately that you could recommend?
Well, I'm reading a really good book on the Trinity by Reverend Sarah Coakley at the moment. God, Sexuality and Gender, I think it's called, and it's a systematic theology on the Trinity, and it's kind of reframing the conversations that we're having about gender. And I think it's changing a lot of my perspectives and understanding of just how we're having conversations about gender in the church, which tends to be you're either a feminist or you're conservative. Right. But she takes a different view. So that would be my sort of very current recommendation.
I love it. Well, thank you. Well, Emma, it was a privilege to talk to you. It was really fascinating for me to hear your journey. And so thank you very much for this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the show today. If you're really enjoying the show, please don't forget to hit the follow button on your favorite podcast app. You could do it right now. Just hit that little plus. And then I would love it if you would leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. So you could go right now to the show and leave a star rating and review and let us know how you are enjoying the show. And find us on Facebook and Instagram. So if you want to connect, interact, I post a lot of quotes and different things that you could actually interact with the episodes and let me know how you are enjoying the show. If you feel inclined to donate, there is a support the show link in the show notes, and it would send you directly to a page where you could donate so that new episodes can be produced for your enjoyment. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have an incredible week.